content, not Chrome. Like we've emphasized over and over again, we want to make the content content is king. So we want to put content in focus. So try to take away the clutter so people can focus on the actual content that is relevant. And encourage interaction directly on the content. Maybe you don't need 2 buttons to edit the text. Maybe you don't need an edit button. Maybe you can just tap the text and then it will transform into editable text. So encourage people to interact with the content directly and remove unnecessary controls, because the phone is a very small size. So you want to take as much screen space as possible for your content. So for example, in a game, maybe you don't need left, right, back, and forward button. Maybe you can just drag the little character on the screen where he or she should move. That's another idea of interacting with the content directly. And then the last principle, which I like the most, which is kind of maybe the most hard to grasp, it's that Metro should be authentically digital. With that, they mean that it should not pretend to be something it's not. And I know a guy named Raoul Sen. He's an interaction designer, and he wrote a paper about this concept. He drew parallels with digital design and architecture design. He talked about the Bauhaus effect in the architecture design. I mean, in the, I don't know if that's what you call it, in Rococo or the earlier design area, you really like to have a lot of decorations in your house. You had wallpaper with flowery stuff and made you feel like you were in a forest. And you had chairs that had very decorated handles and foot and stuff that it looked like almost a piece of what do you say, tree trunk, although it was just a chair. You had bookshelves that had lots of decoration and things like that. And then came the Bauhaus effect, which meant less is more. And you have those IKEA furniture that's just a table is just a table, a wooden plank with 4 foot, and that's it, nothing more. And he took the parallel with that transformation in architecture design, that we're in some sort of Bauhaus effect transformation when it comes to the digital world. It's been very popular with having Chromes and having, for example, I know on the iPad, on your book app, something, you have the app looks like a bookcase, even though it's not really a bookcase. So he means that that's something in the past, and he believes that we're in some sort of transformation in the digital world that means less is more. That something that is digital should be pure digital. It shouldn't be a resemblance of the real world. And he even mentioned in his paper that metro design might be that transformation. But something to keep in mind, which he also emphasizes, that just because you make stuff clean doesn't mean that it has to be sterile. And that's a very dangerous thing, because it's easy to make it not feel very stiff because you cut off everything that's fluffy or something like that. So it's important to include something that makes your app human, so it doesn't feel robotic. For example, if you go into an office that have very clean desks, it could give a feeling that it's not so cozy. So you need to add some personality into that space in order to make it more personal. So that's an important thing to remember when you're designing your app. Even if you want to make it digitally authentic, remember to keep the personality in it. And by personality, it could be, one example could be using the right voice and tone when you're talking or giving instructions through your app. You can use a guideline as, if something goes wrong, don't show a cryptic error code, which sometimes Microsoft is very good at, which is not perhaps very useful to user, but maybe more useful to the programmer that actually made that. Instead of doing that, try to use a friendly voice. Pretend that you're helping a friend. If, for example, if your app, if a user forgot to fill in a form, a box in a form, don't just say error or something. let the new user know what's wrong and guide him or her how to fix it and go to the next page. So you can read up your text in your app to a friend and see if it sounds natural, like if it's something you would actually say to your friend in order to help him or her. And then another example could be this. This might be or might seem perfectly fine, but this is not really something I would say to my friend. I wouldn't tell my friend synchronize your phone device. Now, this is probably something I would use more, sync your phone. So sync your phone would be a more preferable way to use in a Metro app that's supposed to be more human and less robotic. So try to use the language that your audience usually use in the application. Yeah.
Will the Windows phone support wireless synchronization towards the computer, for example?
I think it does already.
It does already.
And when Windows 8 rolls out, will we see, I mean, we've seen demos of the current beta, and I guess it's not really working yet. Will they merge visually and conceptually, that kind of movement? Will it be?
Right. The things that have been shown about Windows 8 is early developer preview.
Yeah.
It's not really a beta yet, so it's a very early concept view of what Windows 8 might be. And I don't really know more than what they've shown on the build conference. But what we saw was that they actually used the Metro design language there as well. So they talk about Metro apps on the Windows 8 computer. So whether you're interested in making Windows Phone apps, the Metro design language is something that Microsoft at least is going to focus a lot on. So it could be good to understand the design language. And you could probably use this design language for other apps, for other projects as well, for websites or something else. Yeah, Xbox. It's not just Windows Phone, yeah.
What really do you mean when you say design language? Do you mean design language like HTML and CSS?
Oh.
It might be a design language.
Oh, sorry. No, not like that. It's not a coding language. It's more like a design guideline, maybe.
Okay.
But they call it a design language, so that's why I use it. But maybe a better word would be Metro design guidelines.
Okay.
It's basically a document of what they think you should do when you design something that should be Metro-ish.
Yeah.
And you have some tablet, iPad device coming out next year, don't you? Something
I
like
don't know what they've seen, but I mean, everybody at Build got this prototype device that looks pretty good, and it's a tablet format. And I mean, the Windows 8 Metro apps look like they should run on a tablet. So
you can expect a lot of new interesting hardware coming out.
We have now support for ARM processors, etc. So I mean, we focus 100% on bringing out a super tablet experience. And we shouldn't be confused about. I mean, we've been betting on tablets for a long time in Microsoft. We've had these, stylus-type input devices, etc. We have where you switch your screen and you put it down and you take notes in meetings. So we've been very early out. And again, I mean, Apple were quick to translate the iPhone experience to a larger device. We intend with Windows 8 to make it even more appropriate for a wider range of uses, I would say. Not just, consuming your newspaper in the sofa or listening to music or playing Angry Birds, but, other things also. So we definitely believe in the tablet type form factor.
That slate they gave out at Build was just I think it was even a limited run, but it wasn't an ARM device. It was a real machine. It had a core CPU in it, so you can just put it on your desk and start editing your music or run Photoshop on it, or Visual Studio. Right?
it has a USB.
Yeah, it came with Visual Studio. So it's a real machine. These aren't, and it's built on everything that Windows has in it, so you're going to get that with it too. So it's not just a gimmick.
Cool.
One thing that is very Windows Phone related is the panorama view. You can make your application into a panorama view, which means that it will span multiple screens on the phone, so people have to pan to the right in order to see more information. And it's a very explorative way of showing what content your app has. You can think of the panorama view as a magazine cover. The magazine cover is supposed to entice the user and give a little bit of overview what's inside the magazine. So what's here are the highlights, what's in the music and video app. So just like the cover on the magazine should encourage the user to get the magazine actually flip in it, the panorama view should encourage the user to actually explore what's in it. So it should encourage people to drill into the different panels, so to say, to get more content. So just an overview of what's inside, so to say.
So I just love the panorama myself, and the way I usually talk about it from a developer perspective is that you have this huge area, your canvas, to paint on. So you can give you can really create a work of art that can make a brand come through and be really strong and powerful. You can make a sort of emotion come into the application. A food app will have food all across the background and it will make you hungry, right? So things like that, create character, emotion in the app through using the panorama. See it as a large canvas that you can use, and it can also be dynamic, right? So it can change the background depending on what you do with the app at a certain instance, or new content that is coming in, like the album cover or the magazine cover. So this is a better way for you guys to express yourself in designing your app. And it's also distinctly different if you think about iPhone and Android development. We have screen by screen, like little web pages. This gives you latitude to do more.
It does feel a lot bigger, and some of the apps that you've worked on that have iPhone equivalents, you notice when you have the panorama that it feels like you have a big screen instead of having to go in 3 levels and okay, there's a set and then go out.
Yes.
It's all in one screen.
With the panorama, you can minimize the hierarchy levels in an app by pulling up something that's very far down and put it on the top. So people can easily go down there and then back up. So they don't have to go 3 steps down and then go 3 steps up. So with the panorama, it's easier for you to create apps that don't have so many hierarchical levels and pull the important stuff to the top. Well, I can tell you that I've been working closely with some developers and interaction designers to create Spotify for Windows Phone. It's not yet done, so it's not available yet, but Spotify is a good example of making use of the panorama. We pulled out a lot of things that was hiding deep down on the iPhone app. The interaction designer actually made a flow chart. They mapped out every single screen on the iPhone, and very quickly we noticed that it was very, very hierarchical. Some levels were like 10 screens down, and with Windows Phone, with the use of pivot view and panoramas, we were managed to minimize that at least down to, I think, the maximum level down is like 3 or 4. So it's a big difference with if you have a panorama when you can put things in horizontal and not just in a vertical levels. Yeah.
When can we expect the Spotify app
To come out?
released?
The Spotify app will come out when it's done. That's pretty much the answer I can give. It's not quite done yet, but it will be out soon. Yeah. Yeah, so we have the panorama view, which is like a magazine cover, and then we have something called the pivot view. The pivot view is something you can use in order to sort a lot of related information in different ways. For example, Peter showed you the Outlook. So in one view, you can get your all of your emails, and if you pan once, you get only the unread emails showing, and then you pan again, you get urgent, and pan again, you get the flag. So the pivot view you can use if you have a lot of information and you want to sort it in different ways and present the user with different views of it.